Hello and welcome to Curzon Living Room, a series of live Q&A events at Curzon Home Cinema. Let me introduce myself. My name is Kirsty Lang. I'm one of the presenters of the BBC Arts programme Front Row on Radio 4. But before that, I was a news reporter and a foreign correspondent. So good investigative journalism is a subject very close to my heart. Today, I am in conversation about the film, documentary film Collective with the producer-director, Alexander Nanau. Welcome, Alexander, who is joining us now from Bucharest in Romania.
Hello.
Hi, Alex. And if you're watching us live, we are going to be taking your questions via comments on YouTube and Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @Curzon Cinemas. So please use the hashtag Curzon Living Room. That's hashtag Curzon Living Room. And we'll read out as many of your questions as we can. Let me just recap a little bit on events that this film covers. So in 2015, a fire at Bucharest's Collective nightclub left 27 people dead and 180 injured. But in the weeks that followed, many more burns victims died in hospital from wounds that were not life-threatening. They died because of widespread corruption in the Romanian health system. And this only came to light after a whistleblower, a doctor, contacted the journalist Cătălin Tolontan, who's one of the main characters, certainly in the first part of the film. And we see him being incredibly, him and his team, persistent and dogged in their pursuit of truth, just simply not giving up, in spite of outrageous lying by the Romanian government. And I think we can all relate to this film wherever we are in the world, because we live in an age where truth is at a premium, where politicians all over the world feel able to lie in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. So although this story takes place in Romania, there is a universality to it, I think, and lessons for all of us about the importance of good investigative journalism in holding our politicians to account. I think it was a critic in the Times, I think, that described Collective as one of the best films about journalism since All the President's Men. High praise, but I think it's a really fair comparison because both of them are examples of dogged journalism, exposing a truth, and bringing about change as a result. So Alexander, let's start with, at what point did you start filming the fallout from the fire?
Basically pretty fast. I was on the streets with, while demonstrations were happening, because right after the fire, I think there were 2 days or 3 days of mourning, because the government realized it's good to impose 3 days of mourning so that people don't start protesting. And after 3 days, within one night, a young generation basically organized on Facebook and met in the streets and really took the streets in several cities around Romania, demonstrating under the motto "Corruption Kills" against the whole political class, because it was clear that this popular club, where everybody, had someone going to it and visiting concerts there, everybody realized it could have been me, it could have been my child, and this club should not have been functioning like that without fire exits. So it was clear that, again, institutions, bribery were part of the problem, and people in a way realized, like, we all know the Romanian society is corrupt on every layer of it, because it comes out of the communist system, and it's something that Eastern Europe, the communist systems brought with them, and it is systemic and endemic in Romania. But it was the first time that people realized that it's not only about the fact that there is a political class that really steals all the public funds, but this stealing of public funds and in a way, this not holding on to laws kills people. So corruption, for the first time, was visible as a killer. And so I started filming in the streets, but I didn't know. I had a feeling like it's so big. There should be something there should be a way to make a film about what is happening in the Romanian society. But it felt like too much. It was not a decision there to start a film project. And at the same time, what overlapped was for sure the incredible manipulation of this, an organized group of doctors, health officials, and politicians that together decided to lie that they can treat all the burn patients. We had over 180 burn patients and 80 to 90 severely burned patients. And they decided to say that they can handle it, that the Romanian healthcare system is up to it, and that because people wanted to fly their kids out to burn units, in order to prohibit that, they said the Romanian healthcare system is as good as the German one, so they won't get better treatment in another country. And basically, they just prohibited people to be flown out to proper burn units and used a grieving, shocked society in order to tell them whatever they wanted. And the majority of the press, basically all the press in the first days, unfortunately, for sure, also shocked by what was happening, failed to do their job. They just amplified what this band of lying, unprofessional people were, propagating in front of the press.
So at what point did you decide that Tolontan and the Sports Gazeta team would be the focus of the film? And were they cooperative from the start?
We decided to put together an investigative team of our own and a development team for the project, and really started to talk to a lot of people, like doctors that were involved, the victims and parents, and journalists for sure. And we realized that actually it is Cătălin Tolontan, Mirela and Răzvan at the Gazeta Sportului who were the only ones investigating the whole fire and the healthcare system. So they, the moment we thought like they could be great characters to follow in an observational film, through whose eyes we could see how the society is just working, the relationship between power and the citizens. At that point, they uncovered that the fire department was lying all the time, that they didn't even know the club existed, while they actually did authorize it. And they uncovered a huge lie. The hospital managers and the Minister of Health and the doctors said that many burn patients are having surgeries in this newly opened, fully modern burn unit. And they found out that the burn unit was not open. It was closed with a lock. It was only inaugurated 2 months earlier by them to justify their the money that was invested in it. So again, to get their bribes, more or less. And then we realized, okay, this they were known as really dogged investigative journalists, but in the sports world. So at that point, we decided, let's call them. Let's see if they could, how they would react to the idea to be followed, if we could shadow their work, if they, continue to investigate the healthcare system.
And were they receptive to that at first?
I don't know. I mean, you as a journalist can guess if they were or not.
Yeah, well, I can imagine they were a little bit suspicious at first. You've got a great scoop. You maybe don't necessarily want to share it, so I can see that. What I mean, the other thing I'm interested in is in the second act, if you like, of the film. You have this new young health minister who takes over after the original health minister's forced to resign, and suddenly you're getting these behind the scenes briefings, and we really feel that we're kind of getting a look into the decision-making process in the heart of power. I'm interested in how you persuaded him to cooperate with the filming, or was he only too happy to?
It was in a way in 2 steps. So first, when the former Minister of Health, that was part of the technocratic government that should have been, professionals, and we saw that he was a crook of the system that was covering the Hexipharma company. We tried to persuade the prime minister to let us, take a look into the Ministry of Health, because he was holding he became automatically the Minister of Health for the time as long, while they were looking for a proper Minister of Health. And we didn't get any answer, so it was clear the system we can't penetrate it, because we thought it would be great to take a look from inside. And these people, this technocratic government, was supposed to be open and promised to be transparent. And we realized, okay, so they had this first Minister of Health that was for sure not transparent. And the Prime Minister is not even trying to answer any of our requests for a meeting. And then we heard that this young man is interviewed as Minister of Health was actually a patients activist from outside the political sphere. And I sensed in a way the chance to have an open-minded person. And so I started to contact him, all sorts of people that knew him. And after about a week or 10 days, he agreed to meet. I explained what I'm doing, what a project is, that we filmed everything until he was appointed. And basically I met a young man that said, my team that I put together during these 10 days, they're all people from outside politics. Many came from other countries, even from England, people that worked in England and had a lot of experience. And I said, one of our main goals is transparency, because we want to prove that we are different. And we all deeply believe in the fact that there should be no secret in the Ministry of Health, because health belongs to the people and the Ministry of Health belongs to the people. So they have all the right in the world to know what decisions are taken for their health or against their health and upon which criteria. So we could try. And for sure, he was backed by a very open-minded team. I'm not sure that it was just him that had the courage, but a team behind him said, do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's be open. You have a young filmmaker that wants to be open, and for sure they thought, why not?
Now we've got a question from Simone in London. This is a good question actually, because it says the film depicts a very specific sequence of events in Romania. However, the whole time I felt I could watch the film as a reflection of how corruption operates in the UK too. We've had quite a lot of scandals around PPE and COVID and so on. And the question to you is, what was the reaction to the film that has been from international audiences? Do you get this whenever you talk to people from other countries about it?
Yeah, so basically we were very lucky because we launched the film in Venice in 2019, which means we had a window of about 5 months before the pandemic hit. So we didn't even know about the pandemic that is going to hit. And even during that time, we had the same reaction in all countries. So no matter how developed or poor or rich the societies were, we were screening the film in. The reaction was the same in every screening room, in every cinema. You had this, packed cinemas where everybody went like dead silent. You could, it was like in a church where everybody was dead silent. And then we figured that everybody was actually, there was fury, they were speechless, they didn't know what to do with what they saw. And in a way, one could describe it as they all realized that it could happen in their country and that they don't know if the people in power in their country are governing in their interest. And basically the fury that was described to us is the fury that everybody felt we have lost our power as citizens. It was taken from us. And everybody, because we lived through what we lived through 2016, and you know it best in Great Britain, how you've been lied to with the Brexit and everything. we all felt even back in 2019 that a crisis will come in a way. The world feels like, you know, the tension is bigger and bigger, the polarization is bigger and bigger. And people don't feel anymore that the social contract works, that their societies could really save their lives. They are not sure that, back then also, they were not sure that tomorrow the democracy will still be functioning. You know, we lived even before the pandemic in this constant fear of, you know, how long can this go on before it crashes, you know, before it felt like our democracies are not working anymore. So the reaction was the same everywhere. And now with the pandemic, the reactions that we get is basically, oh yes, the crisis hit, and look what our governments are doing, and look what they're doing in England. I mean, with all the PPP.
I mean, I'm sure everybody who's watched it is left with this question, kind of, you know, what impact did your film have in Romania? Did it change the health service? And how has the health service in Romania coped with the pandemic?
I mean, here we have to make a distinction, because, you know, what we show in the film was already in the public space through the revelations that were brought, basically, that was started by one whistleblower, by one courageous doctor. And so society became aware of the huge lies and how the healthcare system is killing people because there are greedy unprofessionals that just hijacked the system and are just stealing all the money. So what happened then is that our society, you know, people said, like, I'm not going to take this anymore. We waited 30 years after the revolution for this society to change. It's not going to change. We're going to leave. So we had really the highest immigration numbers. And the other part of the society said, no, we have to organize. And suddenly we had the strongest civil society ever in Romania. And so we had big demonstrations, and people got aware, and new reformative parties were born. And just an example for the civil society, a certain NGO called Give Life, the rest of Viața, wanted to prove politicians that hospitals can be built, because they promised it since 30 years with every elections. Now again, they promised 10 new regional hospitals. You'll never see them. And they built a hospital in 2 years with money that was donated by citizens. And apart from citizens, the famous band Metallica came and also donated €250,000. And in 2 years, they built a huge modern hospital for cancer patients. On the other side, the political sphere, apart from the reformatories, new parties, they don't even think about changing. All they did is they became more wicked. They understood how to, how to manipulate better next time, in a way. And then when the film came out, that's another discussion, because basically it came already on something that people knew. So the reactions were even from journalists like, oh my God, we forgot all the details. It's true. It was even journalists that said, like, I dealt with it day by day. How could I forget? That was very interesting to understand how we forget basically these traumatic times we go through. And then there was another reaction that I know from journalists, that in the newsroom, for example, the number of whistleblowers really went up. So sometimes, by 10 times, like if they had 10 leads per day that were good from whistleblowers, then they had suddenly 100 per day and had to deal with it in the newsroom. So it changed a lot, and we had a lot of viewers. So we had record numbers in cinema, and there were record numbers on the HBO Go platform, which is a kind of like Netflix, their platform from HBO. So people watch it, and people feel, in a way, okay, it's up to us now. In the cinema, we had a reaction. Somebody said, like, when will you do the next part? And somebody else stood up and said, like, no, there should be no next part. We are the next part. We will make the next part. Or somebody said, like, we have our cases packed. We want to emigrate, but I just changed my mind. We're not going to emigrate. We're going to fight with them.
Now, I think you've described yourself as a sort of silent witness to this affair, equipped with a camera. I imagine that you had hours and hours of footage, and the really difficult work came in the edit suite. How long did it take you?
Yeah, the editing took about 1.5 years, with all what means, watching the footage, understanding the story, understanding what we filmed, watching footage from TV broadcasters, reading articles on the same things that we were basing our story on, just to understand all the different perspectives and all the post-production. But for sure, it was not, most of all, if you imagine an investigation that goes over, let's say we filmed around 6 months. In 6 months, these investigations have like really, sometimes on daily basis, new things come out. For sure, we didn't film everything, but still you have to see how you compress it in a way that it stays authentic and you understand it. So my aim was always, okay, so it's so complicated, so many characters that play into it, but there's this feeling we had while we lived through it, that you cannot have one without the other. In order to understand what the society went through, you have to see all the different perspectives. But at the same time, if you want a film to travel, you have to keep the story as simple as possible. So that was basically the main work, how to make this story as simple.
I mean, had you always decided it was going to be fly on the wall observational? Because presumably you could have made your life a little bit easier by, using some kind of narration and so on.
Yeah, in a way, sure. I mean, in the beginning, we also started to do interviews with the people out of two reasons. First of all, to get to know the people and have an intense time with them, with the camera, and see who could be a good character. But also because maybe in the first months, we still, you're always looking for what will be the form of the film. But my films are all observational films, so I really stand behind a very own kind of observational filmmaking, which you can see in this film, and I really believe in observational filmmaking. So I do the films because I want to learn from other people, and the best way to learn from them is to embed yourself in their lives and start to, as a street photographer, to carve out what this is actually about, what we're witnessing. So I think from the second month on, when I realized it's going to be, with the journalists, I knew it will be fully observational, no interviews, no voiceover, nothing.
We've got a question from Jen in Peckham, which is relevant to this. She says the film is extraordinary and its story develops with something of the structure of a drama. I mean, you have the classic 3-act drama in some ways, don't you? Did you set out with this in mind, or did the footage you accumulate dictate the eventual form of the film?
The storyline was 100% dictated by Life. So Life wrote it. We didn't know, I mean, maybe in order to have an image of it, is like when the journalist finally agreed, okay, maybe you could film something of our work. We are onto something, but we don't know if we are right or if it will be nothing in the end. We could try to film some of this. And then suddenly everything started to the revelations and the corruptions got really up at a certain speed. So we kept on filming. But during the first weeks, we didn't even know what we were filming because they would not tell us what they were investigating. So we had to put the puzzle pieces together ourselves. So basically, you start when you do observation filmmaking with a feeling that, or you hope you chose the right people to follow, and then you have to trust that life is always, something happens always. You just have to be very open-minded and not expect what the film should be. And in this case, for sure, we cannot take credit for the story. The story was written by Life and by this vibrant society and by everything that was started by one whistleblower.
Now, there are two very sort of traumatizing bits of footage in this film. I think that the first one is the fire itself that you see inside the nightclub, and you're aware when you're watching that's terribly upsetting because you think I know people are dying in these shots. And then the other one is that footage of the burns patient with maggots in their wounds. Talk us through those two bits of footage, how they came about.
Yeah, so the first thing with the fire is there's a backstory. So the fire was filmed by a team of cameramen, because there was one character, Mihai Grecha, who was friends with the band. They shared the studio, and they asked him if he could organize cameramen to film the concert, because they were just signed with Universal, and it was their first album with Universal. And basically, Mihai put together this team. Not everybody survived, and Mihai also barely survived. He was in coma for over a month. And after we started the project, I met him more or less by accident. I heard about him. We knew each other. He was also a filmmaker, but I didn't know if he survived or not. I knew he was in a very bad condition. And I met him suddenly in the office of a friend, telling his story. He was just out of coma since 2 weeks or something. And I sat down, listened to his story, and said, like, Mihai, listen, I started a project on this, on your story. Would you want and be able to join the band? And he became a very close collaborator on the film. And basically, when he was not going to rehabilitation for his burn wounds, he learned to do sound. So he became the sound man that would join me during filming. And the footage that you see is basically one camera that was set up in front of the stage with a wide angle, and the girlfriend of the cameraman, who did not survive, while she was running out, she pulled this camera by its tripod out, and that's the footage you see in the beginning. And the second footage you mentioned with the maggots, that was the footage that the journalists were just reviewing, because they just received it from the whistleblower, which was the same. The woman that you see, the whistleblower, is basically the whistleblower source number 0 that you see in the beginning of the film from her back.
And what about the decision to include Teddy Ursulano? That's the 29-year-old artist and architect who survived the fire but lost her hands. I mean, it adds a whole other dimension to the film. I felt that. I mean, those scenes of her being photographed are beautiful and very moving.
It was from the very beginning. It was clear that basically this film is the film of those who suffered under the lies and the manipulation of the power. So it was clear that fire victims and parents of kids that died would be a crucial protagonist in this film. And at a certain point, we talked with more of them, we filmed with more of them, but we decided that basically Teddy is really the best symbol for the young victims and the way they deal with it. And I think I was most of all triggered by the fact that Teddy's attitude goes against what I thought is my instinct of revenge and of holding a grudge and of wanting somebody to pay for this. And her attitude saying, like, I'm not going to let myself poison by what you did to me. I'm still myself. I may be looking different. You can see it. You won't cover me anymore with your sheets. That was something that I thought, this is something I have to learn something from. And that's why I think Teddy is such a beautiful character, because she goes in a way against our sense of revenge in a way, and we let ourselves poison and let ourselves be molded in what others want to make out of us. So that's why she's in.
Yeah, she's very inspirational. I mean, just finally, because we're running out of time, but I mean, for me, as a journalist, one of the most stunning moments of the film was to see those crowd scenes where the crowds are cheering on the investigative journalists from Sports Gazeta and sort of going, yes, go for it, because journalists do get a bad rap. And I wondered whether you thought all of this has it been good for the state of Romanian journalism? Has Romanian journalism continued to be robust? You talked about lots of whistleblowers coming forth. Is there more investigative journalism going on now, do you think, as a result?
I think that the year 2016 and the fact that journalists became aware of the fact that they failed in the first days changed a lot, because as you can see in the film, it's not only Tolontan and Mirella. There are a lot of young journalists being really dogged and really, asking very valid questions. So that's changed a lot, and we have wonderful platforms of independent journalists, and their work is incredible. I mean, the way they put together investigations and reveal corruption is just, it's really 10 classes higher than what the judicial system is doing, because a lot of corrupt people in Romania, basically, they don't go to prison. It's impossible, their cases get prescribed. Because the judicial system is still, as the healthcare system, not up to a modern country. But the journalists these young journalists of these platforms are incredible. But for sure, we have the mainstream media that belongs to the power, because the owners are very close to the power. Or as we have it now, for example, our government gave out COVID funds to TV broadcasters. Which basically, bought them, these broadcasters, and the journalists are really not going after the power. I mean, even, if you imagine everybody is watching this film and talking about this film, but it's happening in the social media and in online publications, you would not hear in Romania anything about the fact that the film was chosen as Romania's Oscar candidate, or the press that we have had during the last 10 days. Like, basically every major paper in this world wrote about the Romanian healthcare system. There's not one single TV broadcaster that would talk about it. But for sure, I'm pretty sure that it's good to have COVID funds. It's important.
Well, congratulations on being selected to be the entry for the Oscars. That's fantastic. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. I want to thank Dogwolf for making tonight's event possible. And most of all, thank you to our guest, Alexander Nanau. Collective is available to stream from now on Curzon Home Cinema. If you enjoyed the film and this event, please tell your friends. And just finally, upcoming in Curzon Living Room, we have this Friday, the 27th of November, 8 p.m, Viggo Mortensen, who's talking about his directorial debut, Falling, with the journalist Ian Hayden-Smith. And that will be available for a 3-day exclusive preview period on Curzon Home Cinema from Friday. And you can follow Curzon Cinema on Twitter and Facebook for all the latest updates. From me, Kirsty Lang, and Curzon Home Cinema, I hope you enjoyed this event. Do join us again. Goodbye.